Welcome to my feather tutorial. I often teach this in my workshops because it's such a lovely motif. I'm using copper, and you can see you can add semi-precious chips into the piece with the weaving, or you can hang it off and suspend it from a longer sort of pendant that you want to create for a long necklace, or suspend it from a gemstone of your choice. You could use liver of sulfur for the copper to blacken it, and also you can make earrings, make smaller ones without the weaving, so it's just a sort of simple outline shape. So there's so many varieties. So I'm using 0.8 of a millimeter, that's 20 gauge, and 0.4 millimeter for the weaving. So my structure is 0.8, but you can use any gauge you want, and the amount of wire that you cut to create your feather is obviously dependent on the size. So I've got about 6 to 7 inches here. So you bend that amount in half, and you want to make a little bit of a point because that's going to be the end point of the piece. And then you start creating little sort of kinks or bends in the wire. So holding it with your chain nose pliers, bend it back and then back again. And you create these little sort of cut marks that will be like, will give it sort of a feathery abstract look. And then always bring it back to the side of the outline. And then I work on opposite sides just to make sure that I don't make these little kinks and bends opposite each other, because I like to have them staggered. So I go on the other side a little bit higher up, and then make sure that the outline of the piece is coming in towards the top in the feather shape. So again, I might add a few more. You can just put one, but I'm going to add a few just to show you how they're done, and you can see by repetition. And it does take a bit of practice. If you find it easier to draw the outline first on a piece of paper and use that as a template, of course, by all means, that might be easier for you. I tend to work everything by eye because I've also done it before. So there you go. I've created a sort of, it's a little bit like a banana leaf really, isn't it? But I'm not calling it a leaf, I'm calling it a feather. So if you want to create a banana leaf using this technique, by all means, this will also work. So then wrap one of the projecting wires around the other. So one is going to become a stem and the other one is securing it together as one unit. Cut off any excess and then just make sure there's no spiky ends protruding and that it's completely nice and neat. And there's your outline. So once you've got your outline, you're going to hammer it on a steel block so that you'll work harden the outer edges. And you don't need to hammer the little incisions that you've made, the little bends that you've made, just the outer rim or structure or framework of the piece. And you can see I'm stroking my hammer outwards to make the wire spread and flare outwards, and it gives it more of a rounded edge. So just sort of stroke hammer outwards away from the hand that's holding it. Also that means you won't hammer your hand, and that will give you a nice solid structure frame to start weaving on. So there's the outline, and now we're going to put the center line of the feather down the center. So you just sort of like eyeball measure it. You want to add a good inch top and base, so you've got plenty to wrap. You can either start wrapping it round the top, or you can go to the tip of the feather and connect it and secure it into that tip. So I'm just putting a little bend and curling it around the outer base frame. And I don't want to wrap too much because I don't want it to be bulky at that point. So just bring it around and make sure it's nice and neat. I've got to admit, if you're doing this for the first time, it's probably easier to start at the other end and then finish off at this end. I don't know why I started at this end, but either way will work. So there it is. It's connected now there. Now you can sort of just meander the wire a little bit so it's not completely straight, because we want this to look slightly organic and, you know, but it's up to you. So I've sort of like given it a little bit of a wave with my finger, but if you want to put a straight line in, you can, or at this stage you can bead it. So before you connect it to the top of the piece, or either way, you can put beads down the center, and then it's a very instant finished piece. But I'm going to weave it because I want to show you the weaving. So connect it around the top of the frame, and with any excess that you have, you can create a tight little spiral that will flatten at the top of the feather and create another little decorative sort of area at the top, and it will also hide any of the wire wrapping there. So once you're happy with the center wire, you can give it a little tap, and just to again work hard on it because you're going to be weaving around it, and this will just make it a bit more solid, and also because I love hammering so I do tend to hammer a lot of things. Being the creator of the whammer, I suppose it makes more sense. So I'm using 0.4 of a millimeter for my weaving. You could use 0.3 or 2 or whatever you have to hand. Just a nice thin binding wire. And I'm just going to lift that top spiral so I can wrap the wire to secure it just underneath, and then later I'll push that over and you won't see any binding. So connect it at the top and then to one side at the top of the frame, and you do a complete bind around, and then you come round to the center wire, and then once completely around, and then back to the side, and so forth. Now I have found that it's easier to bind one side only to start with, and then come back and do the other side. But really, if you want to go from one side to the middle to the other side, it really doesn't matter. I've just found that it works, you know, really easily this way. There is no perfect way to do this. It's just up to you. And I like things to look organic. There's no precision involved, and I make it as simple as possible. You can see I go backwards and forwards, but I do always secure it once around the center and once around the frame. And there you have it. I've done one side. I've had to actually bring in another piece of wire now, and you're then going back around. So it's easier to do it now, because you're going to go, when you go to the center, you don't have to do a complete bind because it will sit in between one of those wires. So you just go to the center and back, and then bind it around the opposite side, and then go to the other side in between one of those bindings, and then just bring it straight back, and again completely around the other side of the frame. So that's why I find it easy to do one side completely, because then I'm not having to bind around the center every time when I come to the second half of the feather. And you just keep going. Don't worry if it's not too perfect. We've got little tweaks that we're going to do later on to make it look a bit tighter. So backwards and forwards, in and out, trying to fill the gap and to give this illusion of that featheriness. So it's very abstract. You don't have to feel it has to be, you know, absolutely perfect. Now, I'm just going to show you, you could add a little pearl or a bead of your choice, just to add another little bit of detail to the piece, the pearl of wisdom here. So I've got a little peach pearl that I've added just to break up the weaving. You could fill the whole piece with woven beads, you know, seed beads. There's so many variations, as I said. So once you've got to the top, you want to secure that around the top of the piece, cut off any sort of straggly ends on both sides. Just make sure it's nicely secured and none of the ends are sticking out. And then once that is all neat and flattened down, you can flatten your spiral again over the top, so that can hide all those workings underneath. And now you can just tweak with the tips of your chain nose pliers. Just put these little twists and tweaks all over. Just this will tighten any loose wires. It will also give it a little bit more of a decorative effect to the whole piece. So just go around the whole piece that way, and then you can see this looks a little bit more structured now that I've done it all. And then you can bend it round something a little bit circular just to give it a little bit more movement. You see, give it a little bit of shaping, really, sort of, so when it's worn it's not completely flat. And then the last thing is to make the top bail. So if you've got enough wire like me at the top, just roll it and roll it and roll it until it's doubled up. You've got a double coil at the top. I'm just going to cut off any excess. And what you can do is just split that open a little bit so that you've got the two of the links showing, and it just gives it a bit of a wider top area to put a chain, a cord, whatever you want to hang it from. And there you have it, a lovely little feather pendant. So I hope you enjoy making these. There's so many varieties, and I'm going to show you a few from my gallery now. So thank you for watching, and please do subscribe. I'll be doing more videos, and if you want any particular project shown, please do message me and I'll try and make a tutorial for you. Many thanks. Bye for now.